Starting live broadcast.
Dun, dun, dun. All right, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, I'm doing my best to start this early, although it's going to be the whole night through. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, I haven't done this for years. This is like a reenactment of the Cafe Gallery. Give it up for the Gallery Cabaret, and thank you all so much for being here, you guys. Triple plus awesome. I know it's like on time-ish, which means poets are going to be late, but I'm going to start by reading. This is a feature night where I'm supposed to be reading stuff from the most recent book release from me through Cyberwit Press. This is not something I published, and it is a book that is titled Testament. I might as well tell you a bit about it. It is in 4 parts. The first part, which is the largest part of the book, half the book, is all post-Roe v. Wade poetry, women's rights poetry, that kind of thing. There are 4 parts in the Testament. The second part is talking about life and death issues, people who are dealing with suicide and that kind of stuff, kind of heavy stuff in that one. Part 3 are poems reflected of the first book in the Old Testament, Genesis poems, and part 4 has 4 poems that wind back to somehow thinking about post-Roe v. Wade and rights for women for 3 poems from the last book in the New Testament, Revelations. But I'm not going to mess with the Bible stuff with you for you guys, because just recently was the 1-year anniversary of the overturning of Roe v. Wade, and this might feel like a cushy, comfortable place in this state because we can keep some of our rights and feel like we're safe with the way laws are passed around here.
We're not safe.
But we're not safe. And when you live in Texas, yeah, that's where I get to live right now. Yippee skippy, which is why I've got on my 50s retro outfit for, well, not the wig, but I passed through, and I might as well tell you guys now, I passed through Hot Springs, Arkansas, where the poet laureate there was explaining that over 700 laws had just been passed in Arkansas that were limiting LGBTQ rights. And then they were saying, and they're planning on working on putting up a statue to depict all of the fetuses that were aborted before they were able to overturn Roe v. Wade, and this is what they are living in. And I'm like, it's crazy everywhere. We might not feel it so much here, but when it first happened, I totally freaked and was writing like mad, and that is why the first half of the poems in this book, Testament, are all from section 1 that are all related to post-Roe v. Wade women's rights poetry. I am going to share with you one poem to start this mic before I call up the first performer, which I believe is going to be a rich experience himself. Oh, yeah. Right for now. Give it up for Rich. Yeah. Yeah. He'll come up in a minute. But I'm going to start with a long poem. It's one long one. It is not only in Testament, but it also happens to be one poem that appears in the 30-year anniversary issue of cc&d magazine. I'm a literary magazine. 30 freaking years of cc&d magazine. From A Devil to an Angel, it shows covers from select past anniversary issues because I can't believe I've been doing this long. But it is in this book, and it is also in the Cyberwit's 2023 book titled Testament. So I get to show off both books for you. But this is one book, the poem that I'm going to share with you that appears in both of these. The one thing I'm also going to say is, if you want to have audience participation, and I will forgive you for looking at your phone for it, this poem is all about an artist, and if I give you the name, just go to Google and say, Artemisia Gentileschi. Artemisia Gentileschi, and you can look at her artwork, and then I will forgive you if you're staring at your phone instead of staring at me for the reading of this poem. Oh my goodness. This first one is a long one from that.
Shit on my phone.
And he's like, oh crap, I didn't bring my phone. Well, then you're going to have to act like you're interested in this. Sorry. It's
I'll look it up later.
Exactly. This poem is actually titled X is for Pope Innocent the 10th, not for women. Question not how this painter came under my purview, but why. Artemisia Gentileschi stood out among painters over the centuries, not only because she was a Baroque painter drowning in a sea of male painters, but because her first painting I saw of her was of Judith, from the canonical book Judith of the Bible. Judith, decapitating Holofernes. Now, although she may have painted expected biblical paintings of the time, she tried to show her women not as pristine and picture perfect, but more natural, more realistic, and most importantly, as strong women who fight. What she focused on in biblical painting was on the attacks, rapes, now viewed from a woman's perspective. This was something never done before. And these were not easy times for women. They're still not. But so when I looked through these paintings over the centuries, Artemisia's strength stood out. Strength in women, in paintings from a woman. In the Old Testament, Holofernes is the enemy of the Israelites. As the story goes, Judith may be his divinely appointed assassin, but the similarities are too shocking between Judith and Artemisia Gentileschi. For I only read later that because her father, painter Orazio, was a close friend of the famous painter Caravaggio, that may have been the reason why Artemisia, so young, grappled with such complex painting skills in the Baroque age, like before Judith could have saved the people by twisting that knife into the assassin's neck, or into the assailant's neck. Artemisia's father hired the upcoming artist Agostino Tassi to give Artemisia lessons. Tassi later raped her, with accusations leading to a 7-year trial. This is where I read of her compelling and courageous testimony while opposition was still all the day-to-day life for all women. Her quote, "I scratched his face and pulled his hair, and before he penetrated me again, I grasped his penis so tight that I even removed a piece of flesh," she said in court, as they literally tortured her during her testimony. See, Sibylle was wrapping her fingers with ropes to pull tight, to extract the truth during trial. So she was tortured. While even in court transcripts, she repeated while torture, "It is true, it is true, it is true, it is true." And yes, she was tortured, but Tassi, the rapist, was not. I later read that after she was raped, at least one other man was there and didn't stop it. Which reminds me of all their paintings of acts of sexual violence, where there was usually someone watching, and they all contain at least one voyeur. Her father may have even known of this rape, but said nothing, because after a virgin's raped at 17, the only way to keep her honor clean is if Tassi would marry her. Think of that. The only way back in the day she wouldn't feel defiled is if she married her rapist. But only after Tassi backed out of the marrying her, the man whom others claimed in testimony killed his first wife, only once this wife-killing rapist Tassi backed out of marrying Artemisia, that's when her father filed rape charges against Tassi. But none of that even matters when in the wild art world of Caravaggio's Rome, artists were rich, arrogant, and could do almost anything that they liked as long as they stayed in the Pope's good graces. For this is apparently the case for Tassi. This artist that is now forgotten today, he was raided and was protected by Pope Innocent X. This explains why we believe Tassi received no real punishment, and Artemisia had to leave Rome to leave her scorn after that she actually received. If her only schooling was in art, she decided that she would then use that tool to exact her revenge, depicting scenes from women's perspectives, giving true insights and depths to the torture that women feel, perfectly depicted in her paintings. Even through Britain, she was courted. Artemisia even became the first woman accepted into the prestigious Accademia delle Arti Designe, which actually allowed her to Wait. Listen to this one. I want this part to sink in. Her admittance allowed her to purchase her artistic supplies without her husband's permission.
Wow.
And to sign her own contracts. How bold of men to give a woman so much power. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm supposed to remember that we don't have rights now, and the U.S. government wants to take more rights away from us women after the overturn of Roe v. Wade. Well, maybe back in the day it really was so much worse. It's funny. I try to act all highbrow, claim I know art because that implies I am quote unquote important. But when I start to look into art, I see women fighting injustices to reveal how better suited the world for the world we women actually are, despite the gags around women while raped, despite the mentality of their rapist gender that women shouldn't control their lives. It's funny that I can look at something as simple as a few paintings from approaching a half a millennia ago, how I can incorporate something as snotty as art and weave that emotional pain in art into something that I see today. Only 1 in 3 women are raped in their lifetimes now. Isn't that funny how flippantly that slides off my tongue now? Only 1 in 3 women feel that pain. But more than that, feel what select U.S. states are now imposing on women now in this millennium. I wonder how many more barricades women must hurdle to prove that we know what's best for our bodies. And now men want to take more basic reproductive rights away from women. Many men never regard women's health before they plant their seed, and now their trigger laws show proof that men care for an unborn embryo more than a living, breathing woman. Only the only ones that think that they can actually inseminate, then they think that their job is done. You men created this mess. Don't expect women to care for your mistakes for decades. I can't tell you how many years that when together women have controlled men's finances. So I think it's about time that men realize that we have rights to control ourselves too. It was also in the 30-year anniversary issue of cc&d magazine. I'm really hoping right now, because I like to make people move quickly, that the next person's going to come up here. I think his guitar is all set up. So, ladies and gentlemen, I want to give double plus applause for our first performer tonight. Give it up for